claim that he had one.
Yeah. So what I learned that in 1923, he was a member of the Ottawa Senators back then, and there was a promise of no trade in his contract. Now, that was an era there wasn't anywhere near the same player movement as there is now, of course.
No.
But apparently, from what I could gather, the people I reached out to, 1923, King Clancy was the first, perhaps represented by Mackenzie King at the time. Maybe he was the agent.
That's pretty funny. Now, I got to say, like in this era, since they came back in 2005, I'm not sure who got the first one. Did you find anything like that?
No, I just went beyond.
The other guy I think had one, and it caused huge problems in Toronto. And they weren't his fault. They were like Punch Imlach's fault. Well, the second time he came around, I think was Daryl Sittler.
Sittler, yep.
Yeah, I'd have to remember that from when I was a kid. But, you know, Sittler and Imlach had big battles, and that's one of the reasons Lanny McDonald got traded, because he couldn't trade Sittler, so he just decided to trade his best friend, which was insane, but that's the way sometimes people do that stuff. So, like in 2005, I'm not sure who would have had the first one coming out of that CBA.
And also remember, too, like dating back to the Sittler era, Elliot, as you well know, for the longest time, there was no players' union. So they had just next to zero leverage. So there was never any real need outside of some unusual circumstances to have anything like that in a contract, because the owners just had way more of the balance of power back then.
Yes, a lot of control. And the union, on some level at the time, was in cahoots with the owners, right?
Yes.
So that allowed, that's matters. Even bigger problem. Yes.
Yeah.
Bigger problem.
Okay, well, one final one here from AA. Hey guys, love the show. Major Australian sports, in particular the AFL and NRL, have a weekend where all the teams play their game in one host city, almost like a festival. What do you think if the NHL did something like that? It essentially would be a recreation of the bubble, but of course, all games would be open to the public. The games could be on a weekend or a Friday to Monday, such as a holiday weekend. Revenue of the games could be redistributed or allocated back to some good cause. Anyway, just a thought. Have a good summer, and let's go Panthers, back to back.
I've never even thought about it.
I love the concept. I just wonder infrastructure-wise if they could pull it off. I suppose if you did it in New York and used the surrounding buildings, maybe you got a chance, but that's a lot of hockey in one area for 32, I guess you're thinking 16 games, right? Over the course of a weekend. But like we talked about, what made the draft great before this year when they decentralized is having basically the entire league in one city at one time. It's great for a fan experience. I just don't know if logistically they could pull it off.
I don't know. This is something we should ask Steve Mayer next year when we talk to Steve, if they've ever think of something like this. Because they're going from 82 games to 84 in a couple years, right? So you'll remember, or some of you will, if you're my age, the last time the season was 84 games in the late 80s, early 90s, they used to have 2 neutral site games. But the players began to really hate those. It was just extra travel during the season that they didn't like. They didn't want it. They didn't stay with it. So that would be the only reason I would say no, is something like that was tried 30 years ago and they didn't think it was successful. But I'm always open to ideas.
Yeah. And that was also a time where the majority of the teams didn't fly on charters. They flew commercial. So travel, I mean, there's
into this discussion.
Just to say, there's enough quibbles now, but there was legitimate ones for teams, certainly at times, depending on where you played back then.
There's no room for logic here.
No, not on this show. That's for sure. All right, Elliot. That was it. The final thought line of the season.
Great year, everyone.
Time to recharge the batteries and come back with more hilarity and insanity in the fall.
That was a
That's what
Canada
we live
USA Four Nations style year for the audience. Great year, guys.
Can't think of a bigger compliment. Okay, one final break, and we'll come back and go through the 16 teams in the Western Conference. 32 Thoughts, the podcast, continues after this. All right, welcome back. Time to make our way through the West, and we'll begin in the Central Division, Elliott, and the Chicago Blackhawks, who spent a ton of money a year ago to open free agency. This time around, a lot quieter. Kyle Davidson said the team is at a point now they want to leave some spots open for younger players to grab them. What are your thoughts, Elliott, on the team that, as you say, they aren't rebuilding? They are in the next stage away from that.
Only Pittsburgh is rebuilding, Kyle. Only Pittsburgh. There's really not a lot to say here. They weren't exactly thrilled with how things went last year with some of their vets, and I think they just decided we're not doing that again, as you said. So I'm not surprised that they were pretty quiet. I mean, the true success of this organization this year is going to be who takes steps. Connor Bedard, he changed his whole plan in the offseason. He didn't go to the Worlds when some people wanted him to go to the Worlds. He didn't go to the Worlds because he said, I have a plan here. I'm going to stick to my plan, and I think the plan is going to benefit my NHL team and myself, and I'm committed to that. You saw the talent last year with some of those guys who came in late, like Nazar and some of the other players. I remember Nazar scoring that goal in the shootout in Montreal that nobody realized went in. The thing I liked about that is that was a big moment, maybe not for the Blackhawks, but it was a big moment for the Canadians, and he rose up to it in a big emotional building. Like, I like that about that player. To me, it is all about how many of their young players grab jobs, how many of their young players keep jobs next year. Like, don't just win them in the preseason, but keep them throughout the regular season. Does Frondell make the team? Like, I think they want to see, can he force them to keep him there next year? I think they'll be better off with Spencer Knight for a full season. But I think this is a really tough division, and only now are they really starting the process. There's a long way to go here, and the only thing you're really hoping for if you're a Blackhawk fan is that some of these young players are impactful enough that they can grind the team towards at least meaningful games late in the season. It's going to be tough, but I can understand why the Blackhawks did not want to repeat what happened a year ago. Like, the best free agents, they aren't going there right now. So you're not going to sit there and say, we're making some of the same